Let's install FreeBSD 14.2 on this machine, ThinkPad X61. So this is the first part of the series that I am experimenting with. It includes running FreeBSD on this machine and going through the entire process A to Z, and also recording in this format, which you see my machine actually keyboard, and then on the left side you see the captured screen of the same machine. I have upgraded the RAM to 4 GB and swapped the hard drive with the SSD with a capacity of 512 GB. So in this part I'm just going to install the base system and then we follow up from there. And I'm going to fire up the machine. One shortcoming of this device is that I cannot get the output during the installation and boot from both screen, from the LCD screen as well as the VGA output. So now I'm relying on the capture card to see the entire output as well. And you will get the blank screen like this during the booting process, unfortunately, so it doesn't show the entire booting process. So we have to wait for the installer to boot and then we start. One thing that I have to tell you up front is that I was in the middle of installing the FreeBSD on this machine, but then I thought, hey, let's experiment with kind of this new format and then record the video at the same time. During this video, I would also kind of back and forth to my screen, going through the installer handbook as well. So we have the option to switch to shell or try like a kind of live disk kind of thing, but we go with the installer process. And here I am choosing my keyboard layout US, even though that this keyboard is not US. It's probably Nordic country because of this A character. I don't know what it's called, but yeah, it's maybe from Denmark, Sweden, something like that. So the name of the host name would be X61, and for the packages that we want to install, base system and kernel are installed by default. Here you have the option to install them with the debug symbol, and I don't want it because I'm going to treat this one as if it's a production machine, not just something for testing or debugging. And as a result of it, I am not going to also install src and test. So we just want the lib32, 32-bit compatibility libraries, as well as the port tree so we can install third-party applications. And now it comes for the partitioning. You have the option to choose between ZFS or UFS. It's completely up to you. I don't need the extra features of ZFS, so I'm going to stick with the UFS. And for the demonstration purpose, I'm going with the manual mode. And as I said already, I was in the middle of the installation, so you see the partition layout is in place, but I'm deleting everything to kind of start from scratch for the sake of completeness. So here technically I can choose GPT, but this machine is kind of pre-UFI or EFI date. For that I think MBR suits me better because also would be the sole operating system of this machine. So I am going to select the MBR, so the partition layout is MBR, and here I'm going to create the FreeBSD partition. So this is kind of like a container or I don't know, main partition, let's say, for FreeBSD. And since I'm going to dedicate the entire capacity, so it would be the whole hard drive or SSD capacity. Now here I have to create sub partition. The first one is the UFS one. This one I will put it 458, and it will be actually point to the root directory, or would be our root file system. And here we can see it's a FreeBSD UFS. The type, I have reserved 8 GB for swap, so this one would be FreeBSD swap, more or less 8 GB, not exactly, but yeah, we are good to go. So in case that you wonder where did I get the FreeBSD -UFS and swap, etc., go to the guide here and the handbook, chapter 2, under figure 19. You can see the list of the file systems supported. So we are going to commit the changes, and afterwards it's going to verify the packages and install FreeBSD for us. Let's wait for a bit, then I'm going to pause the video. So we are approaching towards the end of the package installation, and afterwards we should set the root password for the system. Alright, so here I have to set the root password. Let me actually do this so you don't see my password. And now I can actually select the network interface to connect to the internet. First one is the cable one, and the second one is wireless. So I'm selecting wireless here. And do I want to change the registration domain or country, which is FCC/US? Yes. I will select none, and here I'm going to select Germany. And it's going to scan the wireless network around me. Okay, I have to blur this screen, but I'm explaining to you what's happening. So I have to select my wireless network and then connect to it. So I selected already, and here I have to type the wireless password again. I'm going to tilt the screen so you don't see what I'm typing. Now we have to configure IPv4, yes, and then the DHCP also, yes. It's trying to detect things automatically, connect to the network. Do I want IPv6? No. And here is the resolver. Yes, it's pointing to my router, and this is correct. Now I have to actually set the clock stuff. So, and Europe, here would be again Germany, and most of the Germany. CET is correct. Okay, date is correct, time is correct. Now what services do I want to enable? So local unbound, no, and SSHD, no, I don't intend to have a remote access to this machine. MOSD, yes. NTP daemon, yes. So I'm not entirely sure about the sync time on NTPD startup. And PowerD, let's have it on, and dump dev. I don't think I'm going to report anything if anything happens, so I disabled the last one, but we can actually look at the NTP stuff in the documentation. And the name is kind of not matching here. We have NTP date, enable automatic clock synchronization at boot time. Note that the functionality of this program is now available in the NTP daemon, and NTP date utility will soon be retired. Okay, and NTP here would be the network time protocol daemon for automatic clock synchronization. Enable this service if you wish to synchronize your system clock with the remote server or pool. So we want this one, NTP, but NTP date probably here, as mentioned, that it will be retired. It's already retired, so we have just NTP. And NTP sync on a startup, I just leave it on check for now. I'm unsure about it. So now about the system hardening. So we have set of stuff to select from. If we go to the documentation here, again, it doesn't match. We have some stuff here like ASLR. I didn't see ASLR here. Let me scroll to the bottom. No, we don't have ASLR. So documentation is a bit outdated. In case that you are running a single user, like the same way I am, you don't need to really enable the hide UID GID jail. Useful if you do it under hostile environment or multi-user system. And for the MSG buffer, this is about like unprivileged access to see dmessage. Unless you are using dmessage very often, I think you shouldn't mind typing the password once in a while. Enable this flag for sure. So I'm going to enable this one, so it requires root now to see it. And the proc debugging, it's kind of useful, I would say, so we don't need to disable it. Random process ID, hit and miss, depends on how do you see things. Doesn't really bring much of security. But the clear in TMP, so each time that you restart your computer, it deletes the content of the TMP directory. And then syslog-d, let me switch here, sorry. This is for remote logging, so I have no intention of remote logging, so I'm going to disable this one as well. Secure console. in case that you boot to the single user, it requires the root password and disable dtrace. So is it destructive dtrace? Here we see destructive action may not be used unless explicitly enabled. Yeah, actually it's kind of useful to disable that as well. These are the good kind of hardening measure in place. Now afterwards it comes to the firmware installation. I say yes, and then I have to actually create the user. Alright, now it's asking whether I want to add a user to the system, and my answer is yes. So I'm going to type my username, the full name, UID I leave it empty, user group is correct. Do I want to have a user as a part of a different group? Yes, you will. So we can actually do as or sudo. Login class default. For my shell, I just type it to make sure I use sh. Later we are going to switch to bash in the follow-up videos. Home directory is correct and the permission is also okay. Yes, password-based authentication. Empty password, of course not. Random password, no. So let me type my password quickly. Lock the user after creation, no. Everything looks correct, yes. Do I want to create a new user? No. And now here also install the FreeBSD handbook to just also make sure that I have a internet connection up and running. So let's download the English version. We are good to actually exit the installer and reboot the machine. Do I want to do anything? All I want is to reboot the system. So let's wait for the system to reboot and boot again from the hard drive this time. Alright, so the system is booting now. We should get the prompt to log in. Okay, so now I can log in. So I'm going to switch to the root user and I'm going to install just neofetch. pkg install neofetch. Alright, so it's fetching the stuff from the network and also the port tree is working. So if I type neofetch, you see that we have actually FreeBSD installed, and this is the mouse cursor also is working. So that's all for this video. I see you in the next one. Have a great time. Cheers. I want to thank all of the amazing Patreon and Ko-fi supporters. Your generosity and support means the world to me and keeps me really motivated to continue creating content. Thanks again for your generosity and contribution.